The house on Applewood Street had been abandoned for 7 years. Aaron Parker stood in front of it on a grey November morning, his daughter Kelsey's small hand tucked inside his. The paint was peeling in long, sad strips. The porch sagged like tired shoulders. Weeds grew through the cracks in the driveway, reaching toward a sky that promised rain. "It's ugly, Daddy," Kelsey said. She was 6 years old, with her mother's honey-colored hair and a way of saying exactly what she thought. Aaron squeezed her hand gently. "It's got good bones," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. He wasn't sure he believed in much anymore. It had been 18 months since Anna died. 18 months since the accident that took her on a rainy Tuesday morning, just 3 miles from their home. 18 months of learning how to be both mother and father, of braiding hair wrong and burning dinner, and crying in the shower where Kelsey couldn't hear him. The therapy bills were piling up. His own, mostly. Kelsey seemed to handle grief better than he did, though her kindergarten teacher said she'd stopped drawing pictures of families. Aaron had been a carpenter before the grief made his hands shake, before he couldn't stand to build anything new because everything felt temporary now, breakable. So he'd started buying old houses instead, fixing them up, selling them. There was something honest about renovation. You weren't pretending damage didn't exist. You were just learning to work with it. This house was his 4th project and his biggest risk. "Can we go inside?" Kelsey tugged at his hand. Aaron looked at the realtor's lockbox on the door. He'd gotten the code that morning. The house was his now, all the broken parts of it. "Yes, sweetheart, let's see what we've got." The inside smelled like dust and time and something else. Memories, maybe. That's what old houses smelled like to Aaron now. The previous owner had been an elderly woman named Margaret Chen. She'd lived here alone for 40 years after her husband died. No children, no family anyone could find. When she passed in a nursing home, the house went to the county and eventually to auction. Aaron walked through the first floor, making mental notes. Water damage in the kitchen. Floors needed refinishing. The brick fireplace was beautiful, though, original to the house's construction in 1952. He could work with this. "Daddy, there's stairs!" Kelsey was already halfway up to the 2nd floor, her light-up sneakers flashing pink with each step. "Wait for me," Aaron called, but she was already gone, her footsteps echoing through the empty house. He found her in what must have been the master bedroom, staring up at a ceiling panel that hung open. A narrow staircase led up into darkness. "Is that the attic?" Kelsey's eyes were wide with the kind of wonder only children could still access. "Looks like it." Aaron pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. "Stay here while I check it out." "But Daddy..." "Kelsey, here!" She crossed her arms, her bottom lip jutting out in that way that reminded him so much of Anna that his chest ached. The attic stairs creaked under his weight. His phone light swept across the space. It was larger than he expected, with a small round window at one end letting in a circle of grey daylight. Boxes were stacked along the walls. An old dress form stood in the corner like a ghost, and there, pushed against the far wall beneath the window, was an old cedar chest. Aaron made his way over, ducking under the low beams. The chest was beautiful despite the dust. Someone had carved flowers into its surface, delicate and precise. He tried the latch, but it was locked. An old brass padlock held it shut, the kind that needed a skeleton key. "What did you find?" Kelsey's voice came from right behind him. Aaron's heart jumped. "I thought I told you to wait downstairs. You were taking forever." She squeezed past him to the chest, running her small fingers over the carved flowers. "It's pretty. What's inside?" "I don't know. It's locked. So open it." "I don't have the key, sweetheart." Kelsey frowned at the lock, then at the chest, then at the whole attic like it had personally offended her. "That's not fair. If there's a treasure box, there should be a treasure." Aaron smiled despite himself. "Life's not always fair, Kels. Mommy used to say that." Kelsey's voice got quiet. But then she'd say we should try to make it fairer. Something caught in Aaron's throat. He pulled Kelsey close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Your mom was right about a lot of things. They stayed like that for a moment, surrounded by someone else's forgotten past, holding on to what remained of their own. The renovation began the following week. Aaron worked while Kelsey was at school, tearing out water-damaged drywall, replacing old pipes, sanding floors until his shoulders ached. The physical labor helped. It gave the grief somewhere to go. He'd brought the locked chest down from the attic and set it in what would become the living room. He'd tried to pick the lock, but his skills didn't extend that far, and something felt wrong about breaking it open, like forcing open a letter addressed to someone else. Kelsey was fascinated by it. She'd sit cross-legged in front of the chest after school, inventing stories about what might be inside: pirate treasure, magic stones, love letters from 100 years ago. Maybe it's a wedding dress, she said one afternoon while Aaron replaced the kitchen cabinets. Maybe she was going to get married, but then something sad happened. Maybe, Aaron said, not looking up from his work. He didn't love where her imagination went sometimes, too close to their own sad story. Or maybe it's baby clothes from a baby that grew up. Aaron paused, his drill hovering over the wood. Why do you think about this stuff, Kels? She shrugged, tracing the carved flowers with one finger. Because someone loved this box. See how they made the flowers? That takes a long time. You only do that for something important. She was right, 6 years old, and she understood what Aaron was still learning. That the things we save tell the story of what we couldn't bear to lose. 3 weeks into the renovation, Aaron found the first photograph. It was tucked behind a loose board in one of the upstairs closets, black and white, creased down the middle. It showed a young couple, maybe in their 20s, standing in front of this very house. The man wore a military uniform. The woman wore a dress with flowers on it and a smile that looked like sunshine. Aaron turned it over. Written in faded ink. Robert and Margaret, 1951. Our first home. So that was them. Margaret Chen and her husband. Aaron stared at their young faces, at the way Robert's hand rested on Margaret's shoulder, at the hope in their eyes. They had no idea what was coming. The years Margaret would spend here alone after Robert was gone. The way this house would become her fortress and her prison. Maybe that's what all houses were, Aaron thought. Containers for the lives we meant to live and the ones we actually got. He brought the photo downstairs to show Kelsey. They look happy, she said, studying it carefully. They do. Do you think they were happy? Aaron looked at his daughter, at her serious expression, and wondered when 6-year-olds had gotten so philosophical. I think they were happy when this picture was taken, and that counts for something. Kelsey nodded slowly, then looked at the locked chest. Do you think Mrs. Margaret wanted someone to open that? I don't know, sweetheart. I think she did. I think she left it locked because she wanted someone to work for it, to care enough to find the key. That's a nice thought. It's not a thought, Daddy. It's what she would have done. If you loved something enough to lock it up, you loved it enough to want someone to find it someday. Aaron had no answer for that. His daughter's wisdom sometimes felt like it came from somewhere beyond her years, beyond this world. Maybe from Anna, watching over them both. The weeks passed. Thanksgiving came and went, just the two of them, and a store-bought rotisserie chicken. Aaron's sister had invited them to her place, but he'd declined. He wasn't ready for other people's pity, their careful questions and sad eyes. The house on Applewood Street was coming together. The kitchen gleamed with new countertops. The floors shone honey gold in the winter light. Aaron had repaired the porch and repainted the exterior, a soft sage green that Margaret Chen probably never would have chosen, but that felt right somehow. Like a new chapter. But the chest remained locked. It bothered him more than it should have. He'd tried everything, called a locksmith who said he could break it, but couldn't guarantee the chest wouldn't be damaged. Searched the attic, the basement, every drawer and corner of the house for a key that seemed not to exist. Kelsey, for her part, had not given up. "I'm going to find it," she announced one Saturday morning in mid-December. Snow had fallen overnight, turning Applewood Street into something from a postcard. "Find what, Kels?" "The key. It's here somewhere. It has to be." Aaron was spackling holes in the upstairs hallway. "Honey, I've looked everywhere." "But you're a grown-up." "Thanks for noticing." "No, I mean—" Kelsey's face scrunched up the way it did when she was trying to explain something she felt, but couldn't quite word. "Grown-ups look in grown-up places, drawers and closets and stuff, but kids hide things in kid places." Aaron lowered his putty knife. "What kind of kid places?" "Secret places, places that feel magic." Mrs. Chen was an old lady, Kels. She wasn't hiding things in magic places. But she wasn't always old, Daddy. Kelsey's voice was patient, like she was explaining something obvious. "Everyone's a kid first, and kid places stay kid places. We remember them." Something about this logic, circular and dreamlike as it was, made sense in a way Aaron couldn't quite articulate. "Okay," he said. "Where would you hide a key in this house?" Kelsey tilted her head, thinking. Then her face lit up. "Come on!" She raced down the stairs, her socks slipping on the polished wood. Aaron followed, spackling, forgotten. Kelsey led him to the living room fireplace, the beautiful brick one he'd cleaned and repointed. She knelt in front of it, peering up into the chimney. "Kelsey, that's dirty!" But she was already reaching up, standing on tiptoes, her arm disappearing into the darkness. "There's a ledge," she said, her voice echoing slightly. "Right. Here." When she pulled her hand back, it was covered in soot. And in her palm, wrapped in an old piece of oilcloth, was a brass key. Aaron's breath caught. Kelsey grinned, triumphant and filthy. "Kid place," she said simply. They cleaned the key together at the kitchen sink, washing away decades of soot and dust. It gleamed dully in the winter afternoon light, small and ornate, the kind of key that belonged to another era. "Should we open it now?" Kelsey's voice was hushed, reverent. Aaron dried his hands slowly. His heart was beating faster than it should have been. It was just an old chest, just someone's forgotten belongings. But it felt like more than that, like they were about to cross a threshold they couldn't uncross. "Yeah," he said. "Let's see what Mrs. Chen wanted to keep safe." The key slid into the lock like it had been waiting. Aaron turned it, and the mechanism clicked with a sound like a small, satisfied sigh. The padlock fell open. Kelsey reached for the lid, but Aaron stopped her gently. "Together," he said. They lifted it together, the hinges creaking softly. Inside, there were layers. On top, wrapped in tissue paper that crumbled at a touch, was a wedding dress. Simple and elegant, ivory silk gone cream with age. Under it, a military uniform, carefully folded. Robert's, Aaron assumed. "It's their wedding things," Kelsey whispered. "Like I said." But there was more. Beneath the clothes were photographs, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, chronicling a life. Robert and Margaret young, middle-aged, growing old together. Pictures of this house through the years, birthdays, Christmases, ordinary Tuesdays that someone had decided mattered enough to preserve. And then near the bottom, something unexpected. A baby blanket, tiny, hand-knitted in soft yellow, and beneath it, a small wooden box. Aaron opened it with hands that had started trembling. Inside were three things. A hospital bracelet so small it could only have been for an infant. A birth certificate dated November 3rd, 1955. And a death certificate dated November 5th, 1955, Thomas Chen, beloved son. 2 days. They'd had their baby for 2 days. "Daddy?" Kelsey's voice was very quiet. "Was that their baby?" Aaron nodded, not trusting his voice. He understood now. The chest wasn't just a storage box, it was a memorial. A place where Margaret had kept everything that mattered: the wedding, the love, the brief and brilliant flash of parenthood, the lifetime of grief that followed. "They were sad," Kelsey said. She wasn't asking. "Yes, very sad." "Like us." Aaron pulled her close. "Like us." They sat there for a long time, father and daughter, surrounded by another family's sorrow. The snow kept falling outside. The house held them gently in its old bones. Then Kelsey said something that broke Aaron's heart and mended it at the same time. Mrs. Margaret lived here all alone, but she kept her family in this box. So she wasn't really alone, was she? She had them in here, in her heart box. A heart box. Yes. Aaron looked at the contents of the chest spread around them. The wedding dress Margaret never wore again. The uniform Robert never came home in. The blanket that had held Thomas for 2 brief days. Margaret had lived in this house for 40 years after her husband died, and this chest had been her companion, her way of keeping her people close. It was the loneliest thing Aaron had ever seen. It was the most beautiful thing Aaron had ever seen. "Daddy," Kelsey said, picking up one of the photographs. It showed Margaret as an old woman, sitting in the living room where they sat now, smiling at the camera. "She's not sad in this one." Aaron looked. Kelsey was right. Margaret's face was lined with years, but her smile was genuine, real. "Maybe she learned how to be sad and happy at the same time," Kelsey said, in that way she had of understanding things she was too young to understand. "Like us. We're sad about Mommy, but we can still have good days." Aaron felt something crack open in his chest, not breaking, opening, like a door he'd kept locked, like a padlock finally turning. "Yeah," he managed, "like us." That night, after Kelsey was asleep, Aaron sat in the living room of the Applewood Street house and cried. He cried for Margaret Chen, who had lived with loss for 40 years. He cried for Robert and tiny Thomas. He cried for Anna, who should have been here to see Kelsey grow up. He cried for himself, for all the ways he'd been trying to outrun grief instead of learning to carry it. And then, when he was done crying, he did something he hadn't done since Anna died. He took out his phone and opened the Photos app. He'd been avoiding it, unable to bear the sight of her face, her smile, all the life that had been stolen. But now he scrolled through slowly, letting himself remember. Anna making pancakes with Kelsey, both of them covered in flour. Anna in the garden she'd loved, dirt under her fingernails and joy on her face. Anna asleep on the couch, one hand resting on her pregnant belly before Kelsey was born. Anna laughing at something Aaron had said, her head thrown back, unself-conscious and free. He didn't have to lock these away. He didn't have to avoid them to survive. They were his heart box, his way of keeping her close. The grief would never leave. He knew that now. But maybe Kelsey was right. Maybe you could be sad and happy at the same time. Maybe that's what healing actually looked like, not the absence of pain, but learning to hold it alongside joy. In January, Aaron finished the house. He'd planned to sell it like all the others. That was the business model. Buy, fix, flip. Don't get attached. But as he stood in the completed living room, looking at the refinished floors and the beautiful fireplace and the way the winter light came through the clean windows, he knew he couldn't let it go. "Are we staying here?" Kelsey asked. She'd been hoping. He could tell. "What do you think?" "I think Mrs. Margaret would like it if the house had people again, people who understand about heart boxes." Aaron smiled. "Then yeah, we're staying." They moved in on a Saturday. Aaron's sister brought casseroles and helped them unpack. Kelsey chose the bedroom that had probably been Thomas's nursery, though they didn't say that out loud. Aaron took the master bedroom and tried not to think about all the years Margaret had slept there alone. The cedar chest went in the living room, next to the fireplace where Kelsey had found the key. They'd returned everything to it carefully, respectfully, adding one thing, the photograph of young Robert and Margaret standing in front of their new home. Aaron had it framed and set it on top of the chest. "So they're still here," Kelsey explained to his sister, "in the house they loved." That night, their first in the house on Applewood Street, Aaron tucked Kelsey into bed in her new room. She was exhausted, her eyes already drooping, but she had something she wanted to say. "Daddy." "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm glad we found the key. Me too. Not just because of what was in the box, but because—" She yawned, fighting sleep. "Because now we know it's okay." "What's okay?" "To keep Mommy in our heart box. To be sad about her but still live in a new house and have new happy things. Mrs. Margaret did it. She was sad, but she still lived. And her house helped her. And now it's helping us." Aaron kissed her forehead, his own eyes stinging. "You're pretty smart, you know that. Mommy told me once. She said I got it from you." "She was lying. You got it from her." Kelsey smiled, already half asleep. "Maybe I got it from both of you, and now it's mine to keep." After she drifted off, Aaron stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. This child who had lost her mother but hadn't lost her capacity for wonder. Who understood that grief and love were two sides of the same coin. Who knew that healing didn't mean forgetting. He thought about Margaret Chen, carrying her losses through 40 years in this house. She must have been so lonely, but she must have also been so strong. Strong enough to keep living, keep waking up, keep tending to a house that was meant to hold a family, but held only her memories. She'd left those memories locked away, but she'd also left the key. In a place only someone small and curious and hopeful would think to look. Maybe that was the final gift. Maybe Margaret had wanted someone to find it eventually, someone who needed to know that survival was possible, that love persisted, that you could build a life on top of your broken places. Spring came to Applewood Street slowly, then all at once. Aaron planted a garden in the backyard, tomatoes and peppers and the kind of flowers Anna had loved. Kelsey helped, getting dirt under her fingernails just like her mother used to. The neighbors started waving. The house stopped feeling like Margaret's house and started feeling like theirs. The chest remained in the living room, a quiet presence. Sometimes Kelsey would sit beside it and tell it about her day, the way kids talk to stuffed animals or imaginary friends. Aaron pretended not to notice, but he understood. She was talking to the house itself, to its history, to the grief that had lived here before theirs arrived. One Sunday in April, Aaron's sister convinced him to go to a grief support group. "Just try it," she'd said. He almost didn't go, chickening out in the parking lot. But then he thought about Margaret, alone with her sorrow for decades, and he made himself walk through the door. There were 8 people there, all of them missing someone, all of them trying to figure out how to continue. When it was his turn to talk, Aaron surprised himself. He told them about the house, about the locked chest and the key hidden in a place only a child would find, about Margaret Chen's 40 years of survival, about how his daughter taught him that you could hold sadness in one hand and hope in the other, and sometimes that was enough. After the meeting, a woman approached him. She was younger than Aaron, maybe 30, with eyes that had seen too much. "My husband died 2 years ago," she said quietly. "I have a 4-year-old son. Some days I don't know how to do this." Aaron didn't have easy answers, but he thought about what Kelsey had taught him, what Margaret's life had shown him. "You just do it," he said, "one day at a time, and you keep whatever you need to keep close. There's no wrong way to carry loss." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." He drove home feeling lighter than he had in months. Not happy exactly, but something adjacent to it, something possible. On the anniversary of Anna's death, Aaron and Kelsey planted a tree in the backyard, a Japanese maple, the kind that turned brilliant red in the fall. They dug the hole together and lowered the sapling in carefully, packing soil around its roots. "It's for Mommy," Kelsey said, patting the earth firm, "so she can be part of the garden." "That's perfect, Kels." They stood looking at it for a while, this small tree that would grow slowly, patiently, year after year. Aaron put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Do you think we're doing okay?" Kelsey asked suddenly. "What do you mean? With being sad, with missing her. Do you think Mommy would think we're doing okay?" Aaron felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, I think she'd be proud of us. Even though we moved to a new house? Especially because we moved to a new house. Because it means we're still living, still trying." Kelsey leaned against him. "Mrs. Margaret helped us by leaving the chest." "She did. Do you think she knew someone would need it someday? Someone like us?" Aaron thought about this, about the key hidden in the fireplace, in a place a child's curiosity might lead them. About Margaret living here alone, but not destroying the chest, not throwing away her memories, not giving up on the possibility that someone might understand. "Yeah," he said. "I think maybe she did." That night, after Kelsey was in bed, Aaron sat in the living room with a beer and his laptop. He'd been thinking about something for weeks, and tonight he finally acted on it. He searched for information about Margaret Chen, digging deeper than he had before, found an obituary with a little more detail, discovered she'd been a teacher for 30 years after Robert died, elementary school, 2nd grade. Of course she'd spent her life with children, kids who didn't pity her for her losses, kids who brought her joy in their own chaotic way. He found another article, too, from a local paper, written when Margaret retired. It included a quote from her. "People ask if I regret not having children of my own, but I've had thousands of children. They've taught me that love doesn't end when loss begins. It just changes shape." Aaron read it 3 times, then closed his laptop and sat in the quiet house. Outside, the spring night was full of small sounds. Crickets, wind, the distant bark of a dog. Inside, the house held him gently, the way it had held Margaret for all those years. Love doesn't end when loss begins. It just changes shape. He thought about Anna, about how much he still loved her even though she was gone. About Kelsey, who was the shape that love had taken now, fierce and complicated and beautiful. About this house, which had become a container for their new life, their new normal, their hard-won survival. And he thought about the cedar chest in the corner with its carved flowers and its locked secrets that weren't secrets anymore. Just reminders, proof that even the deepest sorrow could coexist with a life fully lived. Years would pass. Kelsey would grow up in the house on Applewood Street, would bring friends home from school, and later boyfriends Aaron would try not to intimidate too obviously. Would leave for college, though not as far away as he'd feared. Would come back for holidays and summers, always pausing to touch the cedar chest in the living room like it was a talisman. Aaron would fix up more houses, but he'd never sell the one on Applewood Street. It was home now. The garden would flourish. The Japanese maple would grow tall and strong, turning red every October, like Anna's hair catching fire in the autumn sun. He'd go to the grief support group every month, would become the person others looked to, the one who'd figured out how to survive. Not perfectly, not without hard days, but survive nonetheless. And sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, he'd sit beside Margaret's chest and think about the invisible thread that connected them. 2 people who'd loved and lost, 2 people who'd learned that a house could be both a sanctuary and a memorial, 2 people who'd discovered that the locked places in your heart were worth opening, even when, especially when, it hurt. The key had been hidden in a place only a child would find. But the lesson was for everyone who'd ever had to learn how to keep living after their life shattered. For everyone who thought they couldn't survive the grief. For everyone who needed to know that love persisted, that hope was possible, that you could build something beautiful on top of your broken places. Margaret Chen had left that lesson locked in a cedar chest in an empty house, knowing someday someone would need it. And she'd been right. So tell me, where are you watching from? Have you ever discovered something that taught you how to heal? Maybe it wasn't a locked chest in an attic. Maybe it was a letter or a song or a conversation that changed everything. Or maybe you're still looking for your key, still figuring out how to hold your grief and your hope at the same time. Whatever your story is, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that healing is possible even when it feels impossible, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. These stories matter. Your story matters. Let's keep sharing them. Until next time, may your heart box hold both your sorrow and your joy, and may you find the courage to open it when you're ready.